So in the story of the woman with the alabaster jar, Jesus is at Bethany, and he's relaxing, reclined at the home of Simon the leper. And this woman, she takes a jar and it's filled with very expensive perfume, a jar that's very valuable. It's a year's wages. And she goes to Jesus and she enters this home and she takes it and she breaks the seal and she pours it all over Jesus's head and anoints him. This leads me to the question of why? Why did she do this? Why would this woman be so bold as to enter this house in front of a bunch of men and a man who was diseased and not worthy of being in public, and be so extravagant as to share maybe the most valuable thing she ever possessed with him, to pour it out all over him? I was kind of asking the Lord that question, and he spoke that question back to me, and he said, well, what keeps you from bringing me your jar, and what's in it? And when I thought about that question, it really broke my heart, because I realized that I have a vessel too, and that I've been holding on to it instead of pouring it out. I think about all the times that maybe I've poured out some of that and given some of it to him, but have I truly ever emptied myself? I think about the things that I've allowed the enemy to speak to me, and those are the things that really are in my jar. Those are the things that I feel over and over again. The things that I've done that I'm not proud of, the things that I've done that have caused me shame, the things that I've held on to that he really wants to take. I think about my past, and I think about when I was a young girl, and I went through a time where I was abused, and I think about how I kind of have carried that. I carried that abuse, not that it was my fault or that I should own that, but there are things that I definitely have held on to in that, and some of the things that I did following that abuse, I still held on to, because some of those things were my fault. Some of those things were choices that I made that weren't well. Some of those things I took into my marriage with my husband, and God, some of those things I've confessed and I've allowed the Lord to enter in, but there are things there are areas, there's sand in my jar that I have held on to because I thought that I needed to. So what was this act that she did, this pouring of oil? Was it just an act of adoration, or was it more? I see her holding on to this vessel so tightly because of what it was, because of the expense of it. I see her hands clenched around it. What caused her to break through so many barriers? And would I do this myself? Would I be willing to go and maybe make a fool of myself in front of others just to be with Jesus, just to show him how much I needed him? When I ask myself that question, I see it. I saw Jesus. I saw what she saw. She saw her Savior up on the cross on Calvary, arms stretched wide, broken and beaten and bruised for me and for her, for my shame, for her shame, for the very things that were in our jar. And then I understand that woman. I understand the woman with the jar, and I understand why she was so compelled to move towards him and to be driven to be at his feet, to worship, to pour herself out. So I think about how many times I've let the enemy tell me things that aren't true and tell me that I don't deserve to be poured out, to be filled up again. And I think about those moments where I've allowed myself to just believe his lies instead of the truth that Christ wants to come in, and he wants all of it. He wants the whole jar. So there's a cost. There's a cost to this relationship with Christ, and the cost is our emptiedness. We have to allow ourselves to be totally emptied and totally purged of everything in us that's not of him in order to be filled with the things that he wants us to fill us with. And truthfully, that filling only comes when we totally empty ourselves out and lay ourselves down in front of Him. Truthfully, the thing that we get to have in return is His love, is His unconditional love. And we can't mix that with anything else. So that's what He's asking us to do as women, as wives, as mothers, as daughters, as sisters. He's asking us to pour ourselves out completely, to totally empty our jar, to let go of everything that we believe maybe that is true and maybe that's not true about us. And that's His invitation. That's the thing that He wants us to do. So what's in your jar? Maybe like me, it's shame, or rejection, or abuse, or addiction, or an affair. Maybe it's a mom who is distant, or a dad who wasn't there. Maybe it's rape, or maybe it's the death of a loved one. Whatever it is, Jesus is waiting, and He wants to fill it with so much more than you and I could ever imagine. So will you bring it to Him?